Who dumped a whole truckload of fizzies into the swim meet? Who delivered the medical school cadavers to the alumni dinner? Every Halloween, the trees are filled with underwear. Every spring, the toilets explode.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah. It's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
And as far as I'm concerned, the finest barbershop in the land shall always be Ronnie's Barbershop in the Bell Park Plaza. Something that, unfortunately, John was never able to experience, not at least as Ronnie's. You were able to experience it as something else. What was it, just like Spanish Lake Barbershop or something like that?
That's exactly right, Brad. That was the proper name back then.
Spanish Lake Barbershop. That is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. What he does is he does something amazing, and he's done it for 22 years. No matter, as far as the post office is concerned, they need to take a lesson from John. John, by the way, I need to talk about the post office today. But,
nice, okay.
Once upon a time, the post office was, no matter rain, sleet, hail, whatever. Now that's to the point where if the wind's blowing a little bit too hard, they don't want to get out of the office. But not John. Every single day, 365 days a year for 22 plus years. Coming up on 23 in what, October?
Yeah, it'll be October 2nd.
October 2nd will be 23 years, but right now it's 22 plus years. Every single day, John puts together the top stories in the state of Missouri. He puts all the stuff far and wide. Could be from Kennett, could be from Peculiar, could be from Joplin. But if it's a big story, John's got it on johncombest.com. Now, we are honored beyond belief that John takes all those stories that are on his website this morning, johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, and he gives us the top three. And we hire this guy.
I'm Casey Kasem.
It costs us a lot of money because he's no longer with us anymore, and you got to pay his family. And he comes through every morning, and he does.
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with...
In third place...
Brad, news you can use about being arrested. You've given us great advice over the last 9 months, Brad, about what it was like to work as a police dispatcher, what it was like to work with officers, the information you've gleaned. We even had Mike Carter on the show yesterday to talk about legal issues. But here's something that we've never tackled before, Brad. Are you ready for this?
Is it Tashara Jones letting everybody out of the city jail? Is that what it is?
Brad, why are you so cynical on a Barbershop Quartet Friday? No, it is about Ferguson, and it is news you can use. A second gentleman is facing scrutiny. A scholar named Tauren Taylor of University City has been charged with first and second degree property damage. Now, the main thing that he did that the cops are all hot about is that he was just having a friendly chat with an officer and grabbed onto the officer's gun and tried to pull it out of the holster. The officer, by the way, is named Willie Mays, which is amazing that Willie is able to serve as a Ferguson officer posthumously. But also, Brad, go ahead, Brad.
No, I was going to say little line that some people will go right over their heads, but keep going.
And it's not to be confused with Major League, the movie, center fielder Willie Mays Hayes, as portrayed by Wesley Snipes. But that's an entirely different thing. Brad, here's the news you can use. You go into an interview room. You're really mad because you tried to play with an officer's gun and they caught you. Whatever you do, don't bang your head into a wall, Brad, because that's what this gentleman did. Mr. Taylor did that. He created 2 holes in the wall at the holding room, and that prompted the second-degree property damage charge. So I guess the moral of the story is, Brad, you try to grab somebody's gun. Well, you might end up on the pavement like Michael Brown. We know that, with all due respect to Officer Darren Wilson Day. But not to make jokes here, Brad, but when you try to grab onto an officer's gun, you're lucky you don't get put down like Michael Brown was. But you go to a holding room, don't bang your head against the wall, Brad, because you're going to get charged with property damage. So that is the news you can use of the week.
Okay, John, why haven't I heard this story? This happened, last Friday night? Was this part of the protest last Friday?
It was, yeah. So this scholar was not arrested until Tuesday, and he was charged on Wednesday, and the Post-Dispatch has the story up today. So I don't know. I guess, other news outlets, Brad, have talked more about the, quote, collision between Mr. Gant and the police officer that put a police officer in the hospital. I think most focus was on that attack, that charge against the police officer, and very little attention paid to this gentleman who all he wanted to do was get his hands on an officer's gun, Brad. I don't know why everybody's so hot about it.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the obvious question. Is this like him trying to redo the Michael Brown thing? I mean, because that's how that whole thing started, where he tried to get
maybe
the police officer.
And to be fair, you make a great point there, Brad. It did actually start with Michael Brown stealing cigarillos and then assaulting a minority business owner. But to your point, the interaction with the officer began with Michael Brown getting his hands on the officer's gun and then before being put down.
I don't,
Everybody wants to be a martyr, Brad.
John, there was something the other day, and I know this is not necessarily along the lines of what we're talking about, but it is to a certain extent. The other day, they had a thing, there was something the other day. They had a bunch of people get together and up in Ferguson, and they had the mayor make some comments about the police officer who's still in the hospital in guarded condition in intensive care, and hopefully he will pull through. But at this point, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And she said something like, "Well, we can't let this incident." I can't remember exact words. Harm us moving forward. And I'm going, okay, hold on a minute now. In other words, it's like, okay, we got this police officer, and you know what? He may not recover. He may, be permanently, in a vegetative state, or maybe he may die. But we can't let this bother us.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to me, that was like the ultimate total disrespect. You know what I mean?
I do know. And this goes back to when we talked about some other violence in the city, when we talked about down at the VP Fair and other city events. And imagine you're a family in Ferguson. You're a black family in Ferguson. And you see these headlines and you think, our friend so-and-so moved out to O'Fallon. And boy, they really like the schools. And, we grew up here in Ferguson, but I think it's time to go.
Well, just like I've told the story several times, the interview I heard with Steve Ellman, the county executive, when he was being interviewed, why I can't remember, one of the news stations was asking him about why are people like St. Charles County, why do people moving there, why is it growing by leaps and bounds, and he essentially said 2 things. In order for anybody to want to live and move into an area, you have to have good schools and good, safe streets, good law, good, police protection. And once again, you look at, and let's take Ferguson, Florissant. The school district has had issues for years and years and years. I think Ferguson has done a great job with the police department. But once again, it's like the city. Who would move into the city? Yeah. I have someone recently that, one of my family members that moved into the city, and I'm like, I don't know if you want to do this or not. Now, he's in a very, an area that seems to be very nice, and, he's renting a home and seems to be really nice. But I'm thinking to myself, man, I hope he never has to dial 911. You know what I'm saying? Because
Absolutely.
And nothing against the police. It's to the point where, first off, they've not fixed the problem with they're understaffed on the 911 operators. That's still an issue the city of St. Louis has. They still have under the number of police officers they should. They're what? What do we figure? Remember we talked when we talked about Jane Duker. I heard her on.
Yeah. I'm not sure what that stat is, but I know what you're referencing.
Yeah, she claims there's really only 400 police officers on the street. That's what she says. But because of the fact that they claim they're 800, but when and who would know better than her? This is what she does. She deals with the police officers as one of her clients. And when you melt it down to there's so many of them when they're on vacation, so many of them have using all their sick leave before they retire. So many of them are on disability, and anyway, let's move on. I just get weird about stuff like that. And once again, I'm a guy born in the city of St. Louis, Barnes Hospital. My first 4 years of my life, I lived down the street from at the time, the Chevy plant there in North City, off of Goodfellow. So, I got...
And let's not forget, Brad, that you ate a lot of vegetables that were planted in Coldwater Creek soil. You would swim in Coldwater Creek with your mouth open. And you were, in fact, you called it the Mallinckrodt dive. You know what I mean? And so, but you ended up okay.
Really? You think so?
Up a notch to number 2.
Number 2.
Brad, it was a tough fight for the number 2 story because there was some action with the Francis House School Board, but that's only one school board. I want to talk about something that in theory affects 1/2 of our population at any point in their life, but in theory could affect all of us, including you and me, Brad. And that very serious topic is brought to us by the Kansas City Star today. And that topic is period poverty, Brad. Do you know what period poverty is?
I don't.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm glad you don't, because it gives me an opportunity to read you the definition. According to the United Nations, UNICEF, and other health organizations, period poverty is when persons who menstruate, Brad, don't you dare call them women. Don't you dare call them women. When persons who menstruate do not have access to proper hygiene education or supplies. Or it can refer to, if you, Brad, are a person who menstruates and you don't have the economic means to acquire period products, then that's period poverty. This piece, I should note, is brought in the Kansas City Star. They had an opinion page intern, some co-ed from Northwestern University named Divya Gupta. And this is a really heroic profile, Brad, of a woman in Kansas City who, by the way, when she was 19, here's how this feel-good story started. I'll cut to the chase. She ended up starting a thing that gives away period products and tampons and pads and whatever, right? But anyway, this woman, quote, had no choice as a teenager but to steal products from a storeroom at work. So this woman, Brad, who was raised in Kansas City, she didn't have any choice as a teenager but to steal tampons. And now she's working with a nonprofit. She created a nonprofit that advocates for giving women who suffer period poverty, giving them tampons. Now, Brad, you say, John, who cares? This is a silly story, some do-gooder activist, right? But the really important piece of this is that this woman highlights the fact, I'm going to bring up the exact quote here, Brad, that the reason why we have so much period poverty in Missouri is that the patriarchy, they actually use the word patriarchy, Brad. And when we have male-dominated government like we have in Missouri, they do not supply every school bathroom with tampons. Notice they don't say girls' bathroom. But every school, every public school should have tampons in their bathroom, Brad. And those bills, those proposals in the legislature, they don't go anywhere, Brad, because Missouri has a male-dominated government. So what do you think of this, Brad? Are you in the Tim Walz camp where 4th grade boys should get tampons? Or do you think that maybe we give them out as needed from the nurse?
John, you really want my opinion?
I do.
I don't think you do. Okay.
I think I do.
Okay.
It's Friday, Brad.
I'm going to counteract her assertion that because of the fact that male-dominated hierarchy does not cater to women's periodical needs, let's say it, okay?
They need magazines in the mail. It's their periodical needs.
Okay. If that were true and male hierarchy dominated, wouldn't every boy's bathroom have a machine in it?
Absolutely.
I mean, because the dudes are going to go, hey, we're men. We need to show that we're men, and we need to have those condom machines in each boy's bathroom. No, because you know what? I guess for what? How long's Missouri been a state? 1821.
1854, I think.
No, 1821. We're on the.
Oh, 1821. Okay,
yes,
I missed
yes.
that one.
Yeah, because of the fact that John, go out and look at your license plate. It's right there on the license plate. Because 2021 was the 200. And see, that was the other thing. The reason there was not a big celebration in 2021. Guess why? Think about it. Why?
Because Sam Page said we had COVID in the county and we couldn't leave our house.
We couldn't do anything. Okay, so for 200 years, 202 years now, no, 203 years because we're in 2024, the male-dominated Missouri's, God, it's just...
It's so silly.
You know what we need to do? We need to do a second show, and we need to just have it be nothing but like the Babylon Bee on radio, and we'll just start picking these stories, and you and I will have serious discussions like vis-a-vis a Babylon Bee story, where we'll say, well, John, what do you think about this? And we'll come up with ridiculous things, and we'll come up with ridiculous answers, and you and I will just play it straight, oh, John, boy,
it's a serious thing,
right,
period poverty.
I never thought of that.
It's just one of those. It's just one of these. This is one of these great stories that allows everybody to rally together and be like, "Yeah, can you believe men?" But also, Brad, and I know we're getting close to the end of the segment, but it's also like the idea that you can't just come out and say girls and women. The idea that you have to say people who menstruate.
Well, it's just like
I mean, most of the time people think that I'm on the rag. Let's be honest. Brad.
Okay.
Most of the times when we're on the air, you're like, God, will John just start and finally get off this mood? You know what I mean?
As a joke, sometimes I would introduce myself as I can't remember. I was a cisgendered, pregnancy-inducing a humanoid. Okay, and people.
And you're also a lesbian because I know you like chicks.
Right. That's the old joke. Kid comes home to his dad and says, "Dad, I heard this term in school. They're talking about lesbians. What's a lesbian?" And the kid's like in high school, and Dad says, "Well, that's a woman. That's someone who likes women." And he says, "I think I'm a lesbian." Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Number one.
The number one.
A whole bunch of great stories coming from across the state in Sedalia. Missouri State Fair. Yesterday was the ham breakfast. It's a chance for people to go and hobnob and say hi and pose for the cameras and some really great stuff. We can't do it all justice in a couple minutes here, Brad, but I have many links up today. The top link is from Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio's own, and he documented a unique interaction between our senior senator, Josh Hawley, and Josh Hawley's opponent. He also talked a little bit about Crystal Quaid, and Mike Kehoe had a friendly interaction and agreed to do a debate with the Missouri Press Association. The videos that came from this, Brad, of Josh Hawley talking with Lucas Kuntz. Did you happen to see any of these?
I did not.
They are terrific. And if you go to social media and you just look up State Fair, you look up Josh Hawley, you'll see them. We can't do them justice here in the limited time we have. But it's a debate over when and where to have these debates. And it is performance art at its highest, Brad. If you watch this, you're going to absolutely love it. Do yourself a favor and watch. Also, our friend Camelia Peterson sat down with Scott Fawn from This Week in Missouri Politics. And Scott is grabbing some folks as they come, not literally grabbing, but he's generally grabbing people as they come by and setting up interviews with elected officials, I should say, that come by to talk to Scott. So he has more than a handful of elected officials came by to chat just for a few minutes about what's going on, what they're hearing this summer, post-primary analysis, things like that. So check it out.
John, have you you've lived in Missouri all your life, correct?
I have.
Have you ever been to the Missouri State Fair?
I have. The last time I went was 2005.
Really? And did you enjoy it?
Great time.
Really?
Fantastic time. Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I think next year I'll take the kids. I've wanted to wait until the kids are old enough to like really appreciate it, but I think I'm going to go next year.
Is it better than the Washington Town and Country Fair?
I've never been to the Washington Town and Country Fair.
Well, nothing can be better than the Washington Town and Country Fair. Didn't you know that, John?
I did know that, and I want to go see Candlebox and Gin Blossoms and other groups that I listened to 30 plus years ago.
Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?